Hello, I'm Malcolm Haslett.
And I'm Janice Baker. What's the latest in power saving in lighting and air conditioning in your home?
I don't know, but we're going to find out next on Our Time. It's lovely to be here in bright light, isn't it?
Thank goodness.
Have you ever considered how much it must cost to keep a studio lit?
No.
Well, we're going to find out a bit of those things in this episode. But before we start, I'd just like to show you this photograph of a band that I was 18 years old in and singing. And our first guest is in the same picture. Here's the picture.
Ooh.
And the person who is second on the right is this fella, Leith Jarvis.
Where did you dig that up from?
Well, I don't know. I think you might have given it to me without me realising.
I had hair then. I mean, that's disgraceful.
We all had hair then. Yes. And mine was the right colour then.
It's all good, a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but you were an
days.
apprentice with, was it called ETSA then?
It was ETSA, and I was sold like a slave when they sold the place back in the year 2000.
And that changed things for you too, didn't it? Because that gave you a completely different direction in life.
Well, I was a technician, and I went around doing energy assessments, which is what I'm doing now. And suddenly they sold the place, and they looked at my teeth and said, yeah, he's not too old yet. So I ended up with AGL, the company from Sydney. Then I had about 3 or 4 very happy years there. They were a good company to work for. And then they finally put me out to pasture.
That was a so-called big R, retirement.
Retirement, a wonderful thing that you're just at your peak. You haven't even peaked yet, and they retire you.
And you got bored.
Oh, after 3 months, you can only travel so much.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Yeah, we can only travel so much. I went teaching trade school for a few years, lighting. And then a scheme came up from the state government called the REES scheme, which was...
This is here in South Australia.
Here in South Australia, and there are similar schemes interstate in most of the states, which was energy management, replacing light globes with more energy efficient ones, which I hope to be talking about. And they rang me and they said, you want to help set this scheme up? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. So anyway, I helped them with the audits and how to do things, and then they said, oh, well, you want to do this? So I did that for about 8 years.
Well, so basically you've had a career in electricity. You've also, on the other side of it, had a career as a musician, as a guitar player and then a bass player.
Paid for the house.
There you go. Now,
well,
speaking of paying for the house,
Yes.
Janice, I'm sure you would have in the house before you moved into
The new house.
The new house. I was trying to find a word for the new house, to the palatial mansion. You probably would have had globes like this with the little curly thing in the middle that were constantly going pop.
Yes.
Now, why have these changed? Oh, sorry, I should explain. I've got to remember to
explain
call
the
you
name.
Leith, but I should call you Robert because that's your real name. But we all called him
confusing.
Doc. So if I call him Doc, please forgive me.
That's a family name, you see. That's a very privileged name.
I know. So these little lights are called what?
They're incandescent lights. They've been around since Mr. Edison invented them some 150 years ago.
But they've now changed to these.
They look the same. Well, they don't.
Well, they're
look
not
the
the
same
same
when
at
you're
all.
No, but they do sort of look the same because
No.
when you see the two of them together, but this one here is the one that's now gone.
Or you can't import them anymore, so that's
Okay.
put them off the market.
Yep.
There's thousands and thousands of those old
So
ones
should we
around.
just throw this away? Phil, are you ready to
It's
catch?
7 years.
Come on, Phil.
It's 7 years bad luck.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
we won't have that.
No,
So-
that's a halogen.
So do these cost less to run than those?
About 20% less.
Okay.
That's a 60 watter. That one's about a 42, so it's proportionally about 20% less.
Right.
The trouble with those is they're a great lamp. They give off a nice white light, but they run very hot.
Right.
Which
And-
means, what does that mean?
It means if you put them in an enclosed fitting,
Yes.
Yes.
you know, with a nice oyster
lamp, yeah.
out, it can cook the wiring inside because there's a lot of heat.
Wow. Okay.
So you've never changed a light bulb that's just gone...
Yeah. Sometimes
Obvious.
when you take the
Yeah,
cover
no, I
off a
have.
light and you see the wiring's charred,
Oh.
It's because of those things.
Okay.
So
And you
there
burn
are
your
a few
fingers.
issues.
Yes, for most guys who've had to change a light globe at some point.
It's
You know, isn't that what husbands are for?
it's not a guy thing.
That's so sexist.
You should have seen him when he was a lad. It was terrible.
So now we've got these curly, fabulous ones that aren't all that glamorous, but
No.
Okay, they brought out the compact fluoro or fluorescent. Now that's basically a fluorescent tube. You know,
Right.
there are the ones around that have
Yes.
been Mr. Tesla invented
the long
like
ones, yeah.
like 120 years ago. That's all that is, and they made them that shape. That's fantastic, and they run at 20% of the incandescent that you had.
Okay.
Okay,
So we're going down in.
1/5 of the power. Fantastic.
Right, like
no,
that.
no, bring it back.
Bring it back. Okay.
The trouble was, you put that in your roof, your ceiling,
Yes.
should I say. If you look at, the light goes that way,
Or when they're up
sideways.
that way. Yeah.
And when you look up, the only thing that's emitting light down to you is about that big.
Right.
So everyone says, oh, the walls look fabulous.
But you
But I
can't
can't
see what
read.
it
You
is.
can't see them.
Anyway, they're pretty dreadful.
Okay.
And you'll still see them around.
So that's obviously been usurped for this curly one.
Yes, and they said, oh, we'll make them curly and then the light will go in all directions like the old lamps. Fantastic.
But
Yeah, and that worked. They're a really good lamp, except for one, and both of them. They do have mercury in them, like a fluoro.
Oh, okay.
You have to be careful of disposal.
Right.
You really need to get onto your local council or some...
You don't just throw them in the bin.
Oh, no, because there's about 2 or 3 milligrams of mercury in them, and you have to dispose of them properly. Your local council, if you were given the ring, they'll tell you we can dispose of them. And some, as I was trying to say earlier, some of the warehouses...
I'll take them back.
Yeah, they'll have them. They'll have a
Like a
special
disposal.
place.
Yeah, disposal.
But the
Did
local
you know
council
that?
will
no,
tell
I
you.
didn't. So, like, even if you bought them, say at Mitre 10 or Bunnings, you could take them back to there and they would dispose of them for you?
Yes.
They
Yeah,
have a
well, maybe.
Some of them
Special
have a
bin?
bin out the front to put your old computers and stuff.
It varies a bit. I can't say Bunnings because I know some do and some don't.
No.
The same with Mitre 10.
Okay.
The Delight Shop.
I
I'm
know-
mentioning a few people
Yeah.
here now, but they do it. I know IKEA do it. But
Well, yeah, I do. When I have taken a globe in to get a replacement, and I usually do take one and say, "Can you help me find one like this, please?"
Oh.
And she'll say, "Is it dead? Do you want me to actually recycle it for you?"
well, yeah.
And so,
Yeah. The
Yeah.
perfect
Well,
world
Thank you
is
very
the
much.
councils will do it themselves
yes.
because they dispose of things, but that's not quite worked yet. to be
I so badly want to put this in my mouth. The
No,
absolute
no, hang
worst
on.
thing to possibly say.
Yeah. One thing on those fluorescents before we move on.
Yes.
You're an artistic person, Malcolm. That's what you kept telling me all these years.
Yes, one of those.
Yes. What's the problem with those two compact fluoro lights? Hold them up again.
What's the problem?
What's the problem with your discerning eye? That's sticking out of your ceiling. What is it?
Well, it depends how far it sticks out, I guess.
Yeah.
Hard to put a thing over?
I'm testing you now.
Oh, okay. No idea.
They're as ugly as.
Oh,
Are they not? And all
for
these,
yourself.
all of those homes we've been to, we've
Yes.
put them in and they say, oh, they're wonderful. They only use 1/5 of the power, but they're ugly. I don't want them.
No.
Right,
it's
no, I get
true.
it.
Continuing problem. So, next, that is
The same as.
Looks like
But-
it
one
looks
of
like an
those.
ordinary light globe, like the first one we spoke
Does,
of.
Yes.
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 But does the same job as the others.
These all give out the same light, but at a reduced wattage. That only draws about 1/6 of the power of that original incandescent.
Really? So
Yes,
that's a
it's even less.
sixth of that one.
Yes.
And roughly the same sort of size.
Yeah, and they'll give out the same light,
There you go.
and there's no disposable problems because it's a light emitting diode, Malcolm.
Okay.
That's what it's
I'm
called, and
thrilled
it's
you
only
told me that.
electronics.
Okay.
There's no disposal problems. So the
Oh,
LEDs...
actually, that's really valid, isn't it? There's no disposal problem with that.
No.
So you could chuck that in your... Is it a recycle bin?
There's no provision in recycle bins for these.
Right.
And I would, myself, still
Yes.
put them in the shoebox in the shed. When you get enough of them, take them to the disposal place.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Do you
would
know, I've never
suggest
thought
that's
to
with
do
any
that.
light.
Yeah.
But that makes perfect sense. I've never even thought to do that.
No.
Okay, so in your palatial mansion, did you get these put in the ceiling?
Well,
And you only see that bit there?
Yes.
Downlights.
Downlight.
Tell me about downlights, Doc Leith.
Well, you've got something like 20.
Fair few.
Very bad putty tat you are.
Oh. Very bad.
No, sorry about that. Each one of those is about 50 watts. So it's very, very close to that 60 watt one. Because they only, if you look at a house that's got lots of lights, downlights, the light goes downwards.
Yes.
Yes? Now, when you read and you've got a normal light globe, the light bounces off the walls and ceiling and down to where you're reading. If you've got a downlight, you get the light straight on where you're reading, but there's nothing on the walls or ceiling.
No, that's true.
And if you have a look at some of these places, the walls and ceiling are dark and the light's going straight down. So you have to have a lot more of them to get a decent light and a uniform light through the area. So these lovely big living areas are using lots of power. So instead of 60 watts, you may have half a kilowatt of lights in a lounge room. I had one a while back.
How much is a half a kilowatt?
Half a kilowatt is
that 500?
you're charged on your electricity bill in kilowatt hours.
Oh, okay.
So half a kilowatt is half a kilowatt hour in an hour.
It's going to make me try and work
Do your
this
maths,
out.
Malcolm.
Yes, well, hang on. I'll do that. We're going to take a quick break. Okay, can you work that out for me? Because I can't do this. So, have you worked it out?
No, have you worked it out?
I've worked it
no,
out.
I've worked
Did you
it out.
work it out?
Sorry.
Work it out. Doc, tell me, what is that sum, that half a thing?
Half a kilowatt. You're charged for kilowatt hours. So if you had lights on for 2 hours a day, that's a kilowatt a day, and that kilowatt's costing you about 40 cents.
40 cents a day.
Doesn't sound much, does it?
Well, but if you had 20 of these in your ceiling, that's huge.
Just one of those.
How many have you got?
A few.
Or should we talk to Kim tonight?
I think I will.
One of those, Malcolm, is if you 2 hours a day is approximately $20 a year. So if you multiply that by 20, and
It's a lot.
yes,
Too much.
so you
It's a
can be
lot.
up for $200 a year, easy, just for one bank of lights. I had one lady had $2,000 a year just in downlights.
So what's the alternative for this?
That is an LED light.
So this is the alternative?
Yes, 1/6 of the power of
Okay,
that thing.
so that's the difference in how the two globes look from what we sort of see.
You can tell the difference because the LED lights will have lots of little dots
They're those
until
little,
they warm up.
Yeah, those little yellowy
and
things.
then you've got the halogen one, which is a nice light. They used to be terrible, the LED lights, but now they're really good, and people comment on how bright and brilliant they are, and people love them.
Well, that's really interesting because I didn't actually understand all that, but now I do. So as you look around the studio here, we must be burning lots and lots of power.
Oh, you've got studio lighting here. A lot of that's a different animal.
Yes,
indeed.
well, maybe we won't go to that animal. So everyone's talking about solar panels. Do you have solar panels?
Yes, we do. Can I just ask, though, too, with these, wasn't there something about them actually catching fire in their...
When they were first being put in, and I'm going back some 15 years, I was actually involved in a show home, and as a promotion, we put these things in this house, and they were brand new, and no one ever seen downlights. And what they did is they put the insulation over the top of them.
Oh, oops.
And what did I say about halogen lights, how they put out the heat?
Yeah.
Next minute, there's a fire in this brand new show home. And what it was is the insulation over the top.
Yeah.
So they had to change the wiring rules so that they've got to have a gap around the fitting so that the heat can get out. Or you can have a fitting specially made so that it doesn't matter what you do, the heat can...
Okay.
But that's going back a way. Yes, there was a lot of fires.
Yes,
But
I do remember
at the
that.
moment,
Okay, now.
these globes are, is the expression a cold globe? Because they do
You
get
can put
warm.
your finger on them.
Yeah.
They run quite cool.
Yeah.
And yes, you still got to watch the heat, but it's nothing.
A lot of our
compared to those
theatre lighting
halogens.
now is going to this. So talk us through having solar panels and batteries.
Now this is the new world.
Yes.
The new world is solar panels have been around since before 2000. I was actually involved in the first experimental one that AGL put in, a place down at Christie's Beach. Yeah. And it was the very first solar panel in South Australia. This was official. There's lots of amateur ones. Yeah. And from there they said, oh, well, they may take off, and they cost a fortune. You know, you'd be paying $20,000 or something for about 2 kilowatts. Now you can get 4 or 5 kilowatts for $4,000 or $5,000, about $1,000 a kilowatt, yes. Roughly. So that's been going along merrily, and it makes a huge difference to your bill. In my own case, I've got 2 kilowatts. I'm a classic example. With just the two of us, my summer bill disappears, it goes into credit, and then in the winter it catches up a little bit. My bill doesn't disappear. It's very hard to do that. Very hard.
Well, we all need the energy. That's the
yes. To make your bill disappear over a year is, I'm not saying impossible, but you'd have to invest in so many panels. It would be ridiculous. So anyway, people are buying them. We have got the biggest solar panel intake in the country in South Australia.
Have we?
We have. They're very popular here. And the reason...
Is that because we've also got the highest power prices in South Australia? In the country, probably yes. In the world?
It is, because there's a reason. And what you don't hear in all the malarkey you see in the papers is South Australia has got a huge area to service with electricity poles, Stobie poles, transformers.
With nothing in between. So.
And there's not many customers. If you try and service a place like Port Lincoln, for instance, you've got thousands of kilometres of poles to service very, very few customers. That comes at a cost. So what you call your supply charge, and that's the fee the distributor charges, is well over 50% of your bill.
So
that's astronomical.
It is, but you're right, because we don't actually hear the other side of the story. Politically, it's great to talk about we've got the highest power costs in Australia, but not always telling us why, because we're being sort of fudged a bit by saying, well, they closed down this coal-fired power plant, and that's why it's like this, and that's why we had blackouts in South Australia last year and so on.
It wasn't anything to do with the fact that we had the biggest storm for about 120 years at that time. It blew all the pylons over. It was nothing to do with that.
No.
No. Okay.
Is that being facetious?
And the other thing is when they closed my understanding is that when they closed the Port Augusta power station, there's all these settings for the protection, and the circuit breakers will go out in the substations, and I believe they weren't set quite properly. So a lot of it was engineering problems. And the answer is yes, we do need more constant generation in this state, but perhaps, this is me talking, no one else, perhaps the politicians should stay out of it, and then they'll work it out.
And let the professionals work it out. And don't play with your microphone.
Let the pros do it, and let the other people do it as well. Yeah.
Yes, don't play with your microphone. You should know better than that. Do you know, he used to do backup vocals for me.
Oh, no. Did he?
Yes, they were fabulous.
Oh, yes, it was wonderful.
Just getting back to this delivery of power in a state like South Australia, because we do have a vast area of nothing, and we do have big gaps between the major cities. And you mentioned there's Port Augusta, then down to Port Lincoln, down to Whyalla. It's a big, long stretch.
Try Roxby Downs.
And, even further, exactly. But it's true, we don't hear about that when we're talked to about these things. So your advice really would be this is your personal advice, for just politicians perhaps to tell...
If they'd stayed out of it 10 years ago, in my feeling is there wouldn't be a problem now.
Right.
But
and that's your experience.
I've only been in the game 55 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, Doc, I guess the real thing is that everybody wants to know is how can we save power? What do we not need to burn? Like, obviously, there's heating and cooling, air conditioning. There's obviously using microwave ovens as opposed to, for example, a hot plate stove. What are the areas that we can save
the microwave is the option if it suits what you're cooking. If you're cooking like baking and you want some crispy stuff on the pork, whatever, those little baby ovens. Sometimes most of us only cooking for 2, 3.
Yeah.
Not everyone's got 6 kids.
You know, I never thought of that.
Most people don't use the oven much.
No.
And when they do, they're heating all that airspace
Yes, that's true.
to cook that little thing. You get one of those little baby ovens, saves a lot of power.
She's gone off.
Are we guilty
She's
here?
gone off here. Hang on.
I have a fairly new house. We've done renovations.
Have you used the oven yet?
My oven's this big. It's a
What
double.
are you doing?
It's
Don't
a
use
double
it.
oven.
No,
I know.
take the
And there's
shelves out
2
and put
of
the
us.
microwave in it.
I don't have a
Well, do you know, I've
I know.
discovered the little glass benchtop ovens. I use it all the time for roasting,
Oh, they're
heating
good.
stuff. They're fantastic. Quick as,
Yeah.
and really
The
fantastic.
best one, is it an induction one?
I don't know. When you visit me next,
The
you
one-
have to tell me.
The ones with the little elements that glow
It
through the
didn't induce
glass,
me to anything
that's a
but to
normal
cook more
cooktop
food.
underneath.
Yeah.
But that's got an element and heats up. If you get an induction one, and that simply induces a magnetic field into the pot, pot gets hot, cooks the food. The only thing that gets hot is the pot and the food, no cooktop. That's still quite cool, and it runs about the same efficiency
okay.
as a microwave. They're wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
So that's an induction cooktop, and they look like the one you're describing.
Okay, so I'm ahead for change. And it's also things like even putting too much water in your kettle when you make a cup of tea or coffee.
How long's the kettle on for?
But if you just want one glass of or cup of water,
Yeah, that's the advice.
why fill the kettle?
Yes, but in the end, you won't notice it on the bill, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, because how many cups of tea do you have a day?
I don't know.
Coffee, whatever.
I make coffee in the morning and keep sticking it in the microwave. Make
that's
a big
all right.
pot in the morning and
But
I'm in trouble again.
the thing is, with
hang on. Just hold that thought. Hold
She's
that
fine,
thought.
isn't she?
We're going to just go and make a cup of tea. We'll be back in a minute. Hang on. We're talking with Leith, Jarvis, about electricity, and you've just said you've got...
No, it's just because you were talking about kettles and how effective they are and running them. But somebody actually, because we put a zip tap in our kitchen, which is
Yeah.
great because I can just turn it on instant hot water. I don't have to have the kettle on. But then somebody said to me, if you go away, say for a couple of weeks on holiday, it's like you're running your kettle the whole time.
look, once it heats up, the thermostat cuts it out. That's fine.
Okay.
But it keeps reheating because there are losses. So yeah, you turn it off. And you turn off your normal water heater too if it's a storage one.
Now, I did that when
Learn
I went
something
away.
new.
Yes, I knew about that one because
Okay.
he told me. Now, what's the scheme? There's a scheme at the moment, isn't it? There?
One of the reasons I still exist and get some extra money to go on holidays is what they call the REES scheme. And I mentioned it a while back, is a scheme where you replace those incandescent lights with the LED lights.
So your old lights for new lights?
Yes, and now it's a free scheme. We'll put in the LED lights. We'll put in a water saver shower head, and we haven't discussed water heating.
No.
And also, if you've got a concession card, if you're a pensioner,
Old.
if you're old and you've got a concession card, we will do a free energy assessment. And one of my troops that I've trained will go out there, and it'll take about half an hour, and they'll go through the place. They'll look at your electricity bill and your gas bill and see where you can make some quick savings on a lot of the stuff that I've just spoken about. Just go on the web and all that. Yes, that's a bright ideas. Come on, I've got another one.
What?
Statue of Liberty. Frankenstein. Any more?
No, just leave it there, I think, because we have to go.
Thank you.
As much as
You
we'd
do.
like to do impersonations with light globes, I just keep thinking of Uncle Festus by putting that in.
No,
I'm
we
sorry, I
won't do
can't do that. We'll see you next time. Keep yourself nice till then.